Hi everyone, Jason here from spiritualbabies.net. You've joined us for show 5 now in the series we're doing on Hoshea, however you want to pronounce it today. Make up your own one, let me know how it sounds. We're guided through this book by Rabbi Joshua Neely, who's been very eloquent so far in helping us understand some of the mysteries in the text. Thank you for joining us again today.
Always glad to be here.
I would have asked for a recap, but if you haven't seen or you don't remember what happened in the last video, there's a link to it right now. You can go and watch that now and then come back after you've caught up. But we are in chapter 4 and we're up to verse 9, and I think we'll jump straight in and we'll give a little bit of a rundown, because I know in the last episode, at the last line, we were talking about the issues that the priests were having in accepting things that maybe they shouldn't be accepting, and they were kind of reveling in the sin of the people, knowing that those sins would help A, elevate the priest's position, and B, feed the priests. And I think I'll start at 9, and it looks like the judgment that's come towards the priests is also going to be reflected on the people.
Right.
And it shall be like people, like priests, and I will punish them for their ways and requite them for their deeds. I'm right in that, right? That it's not just saying the priests bad, he's also saying people equally bad.
Yes, exactly right. It's a simile or a comparison between the two, meaning that both are going to have trouble.
For they shall eat and not be satisfied, they shall commit harlotry and shall not increase, because they have forsaken God to take heed, and then I've got in brackets here, of his ways. Can I ask, out of interest, what you've got in your text?
Because they have forsaken the Lord to practice, and then it continues into verse 11. So there's an idea of whether or not the verse 11 is completely standalone, because it's a very, very short verse, or whether verse 11 is really the continuation of verse 10. And the translation that I have uses verse 11 as a continuation of 10.
Okay, so I'll read those two together and we'll see. For they shall eat and not be satisfied, and they shall commit harlotry and not increase, because they have forsaken God to take heed, and then in brackets got of his ways. Harlotry and old wine and new wine take away the heart. So you can please unpick that for us and make some sense of it.
Right. Well, if we want to be thorough, though, the translation that I'm using also sees verse 12 as picking up from the second half of verse 11.
Oh, okay.
So we might as well go ahead and read verse 12, and then we'll go back and unpack all three of them.
My people take counsel of his piece of wood, and his rod and declares to him, for the spirit of harlotry has caused him to err. That's a very difficult word to say out loud. Error would be so much easier. And they have gone astray lewdly from under their God. So we get the impression there that 12 is talking about idols and idolatry. But maybe you can give us the full context of those 3 verses.
Right. So let me give you the way that my translation breaks it down.
Sure.
Because then we'll have another version that we can compare. So truly they shall eat but not be sated. They shall... I'm actually going to change this one, because they use the term swill but not be satisfied, but I think that the translation you read is more accurate, which is they will harlot. They will do lustful things but not increase, not burst forth. That is to say, not propagate from it. Because they have forsaken the Lord to practice lechery, period. Wine and new wine destroy the mind of my people. As an example, it consults its stick. Its rod directs it. Right? I mean, how stupid do you have to be? A lecherous impulse has made them go wrong, and they have strayed from submission to their God.
Now that's I just want to jump on something there. Often in religion, or actually that's not fair. As a human being, your heart is where your kind of will, your animal instinct and things, they drive you, and your mind is where you make rational thoughts. And I
Right.
think one of the
Hold
first.
up,
Sure.
I got to stop you there.
Okay.
Because while that is absolutely true that in modern Western society we use the terms heart and mind exactly as you are describing,
Mm-hmm.
that is neither universal in the modern world in terms of outside the Western world, nor is it universal through time, meaning that the terms for heart and mind have had very different connotations in ancient anatomy understanding.
Well, that's where I was going to
So,
go. One of the first
yeah,
things I learned about the Hebrew language, explicitly with the Bible, is that often the heart is the common sense part.
it's exactly. I mean, really, there is no word for brain
Mm,
and rational brain as a separate entity that is uncontrolled or uninfluenced by emotion.
mm,
Something which, by the way, I should point out that modern research is also kind of sort of discovering that despite the promise of the Enlightenment, there is no such thing as the rational mind floating free of the human emotions and
mm.
this pure logical Vulcan existence. It just doesn't exist. And in fact, it is more true to say, like most of the ancient cultures did, that our capacity for logical and rational thought and our capacity for emotional thought are really one giant swirling ball, and our actions come because of the result of all of that, not from one part or another. So
Mm.
you can't blame just the emotional heart, which does what it wants, or rely only on cold logic. It just doesn't work like that. And our ancestors knew that. So whenever you see the word heart, it is the totality of how we make our decisions. Emotion, logic, calculation, impulse, it's all there, all wrapped up together.
That's great. So we could read that, and wine takes away the, I don't know, ability to have common sense or make good decisions. Um, however, a person wants to define their ability to decide what the right and wrong thing to do is.
Right.
Okay.
And that, as you say, that's the key. It's the ability to make the right decisions about what is right and wrong is what's being attacked in this verse. That the people have done so much with this wine, which it's the wine that's connected to the other practices of indulgence that is causing the problem. We no longer can tell right from wrong.
Mm. And then there's the interesting piece there about the piece of wood and the rod. I was just talking this morning to somebody about a book I read many years ago now, called The Source.
Hmm.
James Michener, maybe? And
Yes.
right. And it's a really interesting book, especially if you're interested in kind of 1967 war in Israel, but specifically about how a religion can start. And most of the beginning of the book is about a rock that somebody found. And I thought, this rock is different, so it must be special. And when I read things like this about people praying to pieces of rock or wood, that book always comes back because that can be what the human condition can be like. You look at something and you go, well, that shouldn't be here, or that's the wrong color. So it must be special. And if it's special, it must be different. And if it's different, maybe it's better than me. So I should maybe talk to that instead of talking to something else. It's kind of interesting anyway. If you haven't read it, read the book. It's brilliant. So with my version here says, my people take counsel of his piece of wood. Now, who is the his in this context?
So the his that's here is usually referred to meaning the nation, the people,
Okay.
right? It's wood, it's etzo is the antecedent pronoun, I guess would be the term, is referring back to the nation itself.
And the spirit of harlotry has caused them to, I think you have wrong, I have error to make bad decisions, and they have gone astray
Yep.
lewdly. I don't think we say lewdly enough. Well, obviously, you wouldn't want occasion to say lewdly more, but it's a great word we never use anymore, which maybe is a good thing.
Right. And one of the things that's lost in all the translations is this same root and plays on the root of lewdly, harlotry, lecherous, whatever you want to define it as. This is all coming from the same Zain Nun He root that's being used poetically throughout all of this. So yeah, there's this. It's much more obvious in the poetry of the Hebrew that the same root is being used in all three of these verses.
Yeah, it's one of the shames, isn't it, that we don't get that in the translation in English, the biblical poetry.
It's almost impossible to capture.
Mm. Okay, on to 13. They sacrifice upon the mountaintops and burn incense upon the hills under oaks and styraxes and elms, because its shadow is good. Therefore your daughters commit harlotry, and your daughters-in-law commit adultery. Assuming that a styrax is another type of tree.
Yeah, I've got poplar.
Okay, fair enough.
So the idea is that it comes from the word that's being used for the tree comes sort of from the word white. And so I think you could substitute any white tree here and be reasonably confident that you've got the image of the prophet. And we're always going to be a little bit in doubt of precisely some of the botanical references. Things like cedar and oak we're pretty much strong with because they're used in so many contexts that we have enough evidence to know precisely which trees they were looking at. But some of the ones that are much less common, like this, yeah, we're going to have to go with it's probably a white tree.
Because they get that thing, don't we, where the text was written by people in a certain country at a certain time, and then when the translations were made, often into English, they replace the trees with ones which people are going to understand and know.
Exactly right. And in fact, that happens not just with trees, but also with wildlife too, which is why the Hebrew word tzvi, for example, which is usually translated as deer, is probably an error. It's probably more a gazelle that would have been understood by the original author. But the people who were translating in medieval Europe, they didn't see gazelles. They knew it was something that was fleet of foot and that was kosher. And the only thing around that was fleet of foot and kosher were deer. So they got close.
Right. Yeah, it led me to wonder whether reindeer were kosher. And I think they are. I looked it up. But if you can find someone that will kosher them for you. Okay.
That would be the trick.
Yeah. So these sacrifices upon mountaintops and burn incense upon hills, that's obviously... I mean, that was what was done at that time, right? People picked a mountain and they said their God lived there. And then they went and they did all of their ritual activity on those mountains, and this is saying that that's what Israel was doing right now, and it's not a smart thing to do. The oak thing and the tree thing is kind of interesting because we have that passage where Abraham goes and sits under the cedars at Mamre.
Exactly.
And I think that was just something people did. Though, you know, if you were a wise man or a prophet of some sort, you'd sometimes sit under these tall trees, and people would expect to find answers under those trees.
Yes, the terebinths of Mamre, as they were. But exactly, and that was something that was considered okay during the time of Abraham and the patriarchs, but was phased out with the Torah and the return to the land of Israel with Moses, and then was actively purged, or at least was supposed to be actively purged during the time of the kings.
Right. You got that vehicle of milk and then meat, and now we're on the meat, and you don't do the milk anymore. Okay, so 14. I will not punish your daughters when they commit harlotry, nor your daughters-in-law when they commit adultery, for they themselves join with harlots, and they sacrifice with the prostitutes. Therefore, the people that does not understand shall be knocked about. Therefore, the people that does not, I think there's a spelling mistake there. The people that do not understand shall be knocked about. Why aren't they being punished, these daughters?
Right. So this is something where the Hebrew is a lot clearer, because the English, you have the lovely pronoun they, and in Hebrew they is gender inflected, and in this case it's a male they. So the they is not referring to the daughters and the daughters-in-law like you might have thought. The they is referring to the leaders of the community who we talked about back in verse 13 that are sacrificing on the top of the mountaintops.
Right.
So what this is saying is that the leaders or not just the leaders, but all the people, the men who were considered to be, the more dominant at that time, they're doing their sacrifices, they're worshiping of these trees, they're doing this idolatry. And then lo and behold, their daughters and their daughters-in-law are off committing adultery, which the men of most communities would be upset about. Well, what do you mean my daughter is, sleeping around? Or what do you mean my daughter-in-law is cheating on my son? This is a travesty. This is terrible. And Hosea is going, yeah, God's not really going to listen to your complaints about your daughter-in-laws, because you are the ones with your idolatry that set the wheel in motion that led to the deterioration of the society to the point where they were doing it.
Sure.
It's you hypocrites. How dare you criticize your own your women folk when you were the ones who were setting everything in motion that led to what happened.
There's
and you guys, you're the ones who are going to visit the prostitutes.
Yeah.
Right? So
it's a big double standard, right?
It is a huge double standard, and they're being called out on it, which is, the women can't fornicate or commit adultery without male partners. And it's those male partners who are complaining about the women doing it. So guess what, guys? God is not going to hold them accountable when you are the root cause of this problem.
There's a verse in the text that says, and the Lord shall visit the iniquity upon the third and fourth generations. And I know certainly in my tradition, growing up in the church, that is always read that the sins of the father will be placed on the third and fourth generations, and that they're going to be responsible, and it's a whole original sin thing. And I was kind of knocked out when I found out that that's not it at all. It's actually saying that the sins will be remembered, and that if the children facilitate the ways of the parents, it's the parents that are going to be responsible for that, and not the kids. And maybe there's a little bit of that in this.
Yes, definitely. But and also just, the general calling out of hypocrisy for what it is.
The very last line in 14, therefore the people that does not understand shall be knocked about. We mentioned knocked about before as being meant to stumble. Why is it the people that don't understand are knocked about? That seems a little unfair. Surely it's the people that know they're doing wrong that need to be told off.
Well, no, it's if you don't understanding here doesn't mean simple-minded. Understanding here means that their judgment is so clouded they can't tell right from wrong anymore, and they're going to be stumbling, and they're going to be buffeted by the results of their behavior just over and over again. It's, if you're behaving stupidly, don't be surprised when bad things happen to you.
Okay, that makes more sense. Gotcha. All right. I got smack some sense into them. That's the phrase that's coming into my mind.
It would be nice. Yes.
I should do a modern day version of that. That'd be quite good, I think. Therefore, the people that don't understand shall have some sense smacked into them. 15.
Well, again, it may be that they are going to be knocked about in the sense of sense smacked into them, or just knocked about in the sense that they are going to be suffering all the repercussions of their behavior, and they're going to be confused about why this is happening to them. They're not going to understand. This 1-2 punch of 13-14 is sort of a good example. It's, they go up, they do all these sacrifices to these idols, they whore around with, the sacrificial women and all of this, the women who worked for the cults that as prostitutes, and then they turn around and they go, why is my daughter behaving so badly? And it's just, that's not right. Or, oh, my daughter-in-law committed adultery. She cheated on my son. This is so terrible. I don't understand. Why is my family falling apart? I better go back to my idols and ask it. And it's that kind of just, you don't get this, that the prophet is trying to bring out to their attention. Did you really think everything you were doing with the idols wouldn't have any consequences? And not necessarily the consequences that are being, coming up later where God is threatening, larger action against the nation. But this is just your own family is suffering because of your behavior. And you just think, I don't understand why this is happening. and it's so obvious.
That's just, got this impression. It's going, nice time at the temple, dear. Yeah. Where's the daughter? Oh, she's off having an adultery. What?
How dare she?
Yes, right. Yeah. What have you been doing for the last hour? Oh, temple prostitutes. Yeah.
And that's exactly it.
So 15, we kind of introduces a new player here. Though you, O Israel, play the harlot, let not Judah also become guilty, and do not come to Gilgal, nor go up to Beth Evan. I've never heard of Beth Evan. That's a new area for me. Nor swear as the Lord lived. It's packed with stuff. So far, we're just talking about the northern kingdoms, the kingdom of Israel. Those, I think, traditionally 10 tribes are in the north. They have wandered off into harlotry and paganism. What say do they have over Judah? How is Judah now a part of that argument for them?
Right. So this is saying to Judah, right, don't go after what they're doing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That Judah should not be looking up to its big brother, Israel, and following in its ways. Right? That the Judites should not be going to Gilgal. That the Judites should not be making pilgrimages to Beit Aven, which could also be translated as, the house of sin.
Okay.
So that's what they're trying to say here. It's that, and we're going to get even more of that in the next chapter or so, where Hosea is going to reserve a little bit of his warning and of his condemnation to Judah, not just to Israel, which is what he's been focusing on to this point.
I've seen the phrase "as the Lord lives" comes up a lot. Is the issue here the fact that people saying it are lying, or that they're saying it at all?
No, it would be swearing falsely.
Sure. Okay.
Right, and it's either swearing falsely in the sense of court proceedings, or swearing falsely in the sense of making vows and dedications, where someone would say, by the life of God, I will dedicate this cow to a sacrifice and such. So the vows that they were making were often, or the oaths they were taking were often for sacrificial purposes.
Okay. Speaking of cows, verse 16, for Israel has rebelled like a rebellious cow. Now shall the Lord feed them as a lamb in the broad pasture area. So I know a little bit about animals, and I spent much of my youth on a farm, and I know that for the most part, cows are put into, when you want your cows to get nice and big and fat, you just don't leave them in the field. You put them into some sort of stable arena, and you literally just put food in front of them all the time, and they chew on it. It's really easy. And those cows tend to get a bit complacent and almost bad-tempered when that food stops coming. Whereas lambs are completely the responsibility of the ewe, and they don't get hand-fed. They're kind of left out in the field to look after themselves with their parents. Would that be what's happening here? Israel's rebelled like a cow that's been given what it wants, and now that's been taken away, and they're going to be left to fend for themselves. Is that what this is saying?
I don't know enough about cow raising, but I do know the second half of what you said is exactly what I also understand here, which is the cow is being difficult and troublesome to the farmer. And so the farmer is basically saying, this is more trouble than it's worth to keep in the pen and to keep, near the house. So we're just going to stick it out on the open field, and whatever happens, happens. And, eventually I'll come back and I'll probably just slaughter the thing and we'll have lunch. But I'm not going to take care of it. I'm not going to shelter it. I'm not going to protect it the way I have been.
Okay. Ephraim is joined to idols, let him alone, it says in verse 17. It seems to be that Ephraim specifically is being called out. Do we know anything about why that would be the case? Because up to now it's been Northern Kingdom, Southern Kingdom.
Ephraim is a stand-in for the Northern Kingdom.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that.
Right.
I've heard the word.
Yeah. Anytime you're reading through the prophets and you see the phrase Ephraim, 90% of the time, it's not talking about the specific tribe, it's talking about the entire northern kingdom. Just like Judah is used for the southern kingdom, even though Judah is not the only people living there, Ephraim is used for the northern kingdom.
And can you tell us, like, why is Ephraim used as a keyword for the Northern Kingdom?
They were the most powerful and populous of the tribes
Okay,
of the north.
right, all right.
It's actually a pretty practical reason.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Okay, fair enough. Okay, Ephraim is joined to idols, let him alone. Their drinking bouts have become strange. They have led them to harlotry. Her rulers love to invite disgrace upon them. It does seem that the text is linking wine and drink very much to the actions of the people. Is there some sort of picture here, and like an allegory that, surely it wasn't just down to drink. They weren't just hammered all of the time, and I've got a really good idea. That's kind of been it. Is there something else going on? Because I know that vine leaves and the good vine and grapes and these things, sometimes they're very pure things and gifts, and sometimes they're used in more kind of drunkardly ways. Is there something else going on here? If there isn't, there isn't. I'm just curious.
Drunkety ways is an interesting phrase. So no, I think that what's going on here is fairly straightforward, which is that they are engaged in all forms of debauchery, and as should be not surprising to anyone in the modern world or who's seen people who drink to excess, drinking and lecherous behavior often go together. It's not exactly, they're not unusual things that happen. And given that drinking to excess and lecherous behavior was part of many of the idolatrous rites of the pagans, this dovetails very nicely, unfortunately, with the complaint about the images in verse 17.
There also seems to be an element there at the end. Her rulers love to invite disgrace upon them. That they really just don't care. That they know almost that they're being looked upon as people that don't seem to do any good, and they're just not bothered.
Right. Now I'm going to just throw in, and I do not have a perfect translation for this, because as you're going to see, there are wildly different ways to translate, especially the last 4 words of verse 18. So this is the translation that I have, which is, they love, in quotes, the translator puts it, beyond measure. Disgrace is the, quote, gift.
Oh, I like that.
And it's nice, it's poetic,
yeah.
And it's about as likely as the translation you have.
Yeah, sure.
Meaning that trying to pick between the two, it's hard to actually narrow it down precisely. And the commentators have all sorts of different things to say. So this is a confusing verse.
But yeah, yours seems to make more sense in that they do this action, so they love doing what they do. What they're doing, the action that they're doing, has a cost, and that cost is this disgrace. Maybe, I don't know, but no, I like your version reads better than mine. That's all I know. But I think now we've come to probably, for me anyway, the most difficult verse in this chapter, in this 19. We're talking about poetry. This, for me, is very tricky. The wind has her bound up in its wings, and they shall be ashamed of their altars. Now, her, Israel, her being the wind, I've read a commentary that actually said that the her in this is the wind, and the wind has bound itself up in its wings, and I don't get that at all. So can you make that a little bit clearer?
I can try. So the translation, as you read it, is a good direct translation.
Okay.
Right? The Ruach has bound her in her wings. It is very much how you could read the Hebrew letters in their simplest form. And then they will be embarrassed from their altars, or from their sacrifices rather, for the rest of it. So that is fine for the second half, that they will be embarrassed because of what they have done with the sacrifices,
Mm.
meaning with their false sacrifices to the idols. Um, but the wind will be bound up in their wings is, yeah. um, there's different ways to try and break this apart. So one of the things that we can use is the phrase ruach. Um, could be going back to a teaching that's found in the Talmud, which is the idea that people only sin when there is a ruach shtut, a spirit of stupidity on them. And so this may be saying that they have been bound up in this spirit of foolishness within its wings, right? That rather than taking shelter under the wings of God, which is a common metaphor, they are bound up in the wings of this ridiculousness, which is what verses 17 and 18 have been talking about.
Mm.
And because of that, they are being brought to shame through their sacrifices. But that is an interpretation because we have these lovely exposed pronouns of hers and her wing that is very difficult to unravel.
Yes, I'm curious if anyone's watching this and they've got a different translation, or if they've got a different understanding. Stick it in the comment section. It'd be fun to read through. Yeah, the fact that it's her, it kind of leans me towards all the other times that they've mentioned her, and her being Israel, because in the previous one it's her rulers, and so you have to wonder if the wind has Israel bound up in its wings. And I know that, yeah, the ruach word can mean spirit, and that in itself I think is used in several different ways. Is that the
Yes.
wings of eagles and all sorts of things happening. No, it's interesting. Okay, that might be as much as we can manage on that line. But I think the final part there is that there will be some recognition, right, that they've made mistakes, and it says that they will be ashamed of their altars. So they're going. I'm assuming
Well,
is that their previous altars, or is it the?
no. So to be shamed doesn't always mean in the Hebrew that they have been they themselves recognized. So it's sort of like the difference between shame and embarrassment, right? So someone can behave shamefully,
Right.
but not be embarrassed, meaning they
Ah.
don't even recognize that what they are doing is shameful.
Okay. Oh, I see.
So in this particular verse, it may just simply be saying they will behave disgracefully, or they are being disgraced through their altars, and they are just totally lost in what they are doing. Going back again to this idea of the drunkenness and the people without understanding who are stumbling, that this may just simply be they are descending in their degradation, and then their shamefulness, but they're just oblivious.
Just like a vicious circle, like a spiraling event.
Exactly.
Oh, very good. Okay, and that's the end of that chapter, which I think might be a good place to stop for this show. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. And if you have questions, leave them below. Give these videos a view if you're interested in looking for some more excellent Tanakh resources.